It is known to fact that the ancient tomb of King Tut was found in the Valley of the Kings on November of 1922 by Howard Carter and his sponsor, Laura Carnarvon. But the discovery of the tomb was first brought to the attention by Theodore M. Davis. Davis's first clue came from a famous hatch found in the safe tomb. Among these items, furniture that belonged to King Tut was also discovered. In 1907, more clues were found that consisted of a Phoenix cup, linen bags, and broken pottery. But in the end, those clues turned out to be pushed aside and not cared too much about. It was Carter who examined the clues and found them to be of interest, leading to his pursuit of the tomb of the Valley of the Kings. They were given the opportunity to start digging, but were delayed due to World War I in 1914. Once the war died down a bit, they resumed the work. With nothing to show regarding King Tut's tomb, Carter had to beg Cromwell for one last season of searching. He agreed and began on November of 1922. Carter had begun his final season working in the Valley of the Kings by having his workers dig the workman's hut at the base of the tomb of Ramses. After digging and documenting the huts, Carter and his workmen began to examine what was underneath the ground. By the fourth day of work, they had found something, a step that had been cut into the rock. By late afternoon on November 5th, they had been 12 steps going down, and in front of them stood the upper portion of the blocked entrance. Carter searched the door for a name, but only found the impression of the royal necropolis. The design of it seemed to be the 8th dynasty. To protect the find, Carter had his workmen fill the stairs, covering them so that none were shown. On November 6th, 2 days after finding the step, Carter sent a message. At last have made a wonderful discovery in the valley, a magnificent tomb with seals. Interact recovered. Same for your arrival. Congratulations. 3 weeks after finding the step, Carter had more to work with and was closer to achieving his goal. On November 23rd, Lord Carnarvon and his daughter, Lady Evelyn Herbert, arrived in Luxor. The following day, the workers again cleared the staircase, now showing all 16 of its steps. With the door being all the way visible, they noticed the upper left of the doorway had been broken through, assumingly by tomb robbers, and resealed. The tomb was not intact. Yet the fact that the tomb had been resealed showed that the tomb had not been emptied. On the morning of November 25th, they sealed the doorway and was photographed and seals noted. The door was removed and the passageways came from the darkness. Upon closer examination, Carter could tell that the tomb robbers had dug a hole through the upper left section of the passageway. This meant the tomb has probably been raided twice. The first time was within a few years of the king's burial, before there was sealed door and filled the passageways. The second time, the robbers had dug through the field and could only escape with smaller items. By the following afternoon, the field was along the 26-foot long passageway had been cleared, a way to expose another sealed door. Almost identical to the first, the next morning, the plaster door was photographed and sealed documented. Then the door came down, revealing the innate chamber. On the right wall stood two life-size statues of the king, facing each other of its protected seal entrance, though that was between them. The seal also showed signs of being broken into and resealed. But this time the robbers had entered in the bottom middle of the door. To the left of the door from the passageway lay a handful of parts from several dismantled chariots. As Carter and the others spent time looking at the room and its contents, they noticed another sealed door behind the couches of the far wall. This sealed door also had a hole in it, but unlike the other holes, had not been resealed. They crawled under the couch and shone the light in this room. Everything seemed to be scattered randomly. Carter theorized officials had attempted to straighten up the chamber after the robbers had made their mess, but they made no attempt to straighten up the annex before the entrance between the two statues and the antechamber could be opened. The items in the antechamber needed to be removed or risk damage to the flying debris, dust, and movement. Documentation and preservation of each item was an important task. Carter realized that this project was larger than he could handle alone. Thus, he asked and received help from a large number of specialists to begin the cleaning process. Each item was photographed in the situ, both an assigned number and without. Then a sketch of the description of each item was made on the corresponding number record cards. Next, the item was noted on the ground plane of the tomb. Carter and his team had to be extremely careful when attempting to remove any objects, since many of the items were in extremely delicate state. Many items needed immediate treatment, such as cellulite spray, to keep the items intact for removal. Moving the items also proved a challenge. It took Carter and his team 7 weeks to clear the antechamber. On February 17, 1923, they began taking apart the sealed door between the statues. The inside of the burial chamber was almost completely filled with a number of shrines over 16 feet long, 10 feet wide, and 9 feet tall. The walls of the shrine were made of gilded wood and inlaid with blue porcelain. To take apart the examined shrine, Carter had to first demolish the portion of the wall between the antechamber and the burial chamber. Still, there was not much room between the 3 remaining walls and shrines. As Carter and his team worked to disassemble the shrine, they found that this was merely the outer shrine. With 4 shrines in total, each section of the shrines weighed up to half a ton in small coffins of the burial chamber. Work was difficult and uncomfortable. When the 4th shrine was dismantled, the king's sarcophagus was revealed. A gilded wooden coffin was revealed. The coffin was in distinctly human shape and was 7 feet 4 inches in length. A year and a half later, they were ready to lift the lid of the coffin. Conservation of work of the objects already removed from the tomb had taken precedence. Thus, the anticipation of what lay beneath was extreme. When they lifted the lid of the coffin, they found a smaller coffin, and lifting the lid of the second coffin revealed a third one, made entirely of gold. On top of the third final coffin was a dark material that had once been liquid and poured over the coffin from the hands to the ankles. The liquid had hardened over the years and firmly stuck to the third coffin to the bottom of the second one. The thick residue had been removed with heat and hammering. Then the lid of the third coffin was raised. The royal mummy of the Tut was revealed. It had been over 3,300 years since a human being had seen the king's remains. This was the first royal Egyptian mummy that had been found untouched since his burial. Carter and the others hoped King Tut's mummy would reveal a large amount of knowledge about ancient Egypt on burial customs. On the right wall of the burial chamber was an entrance into the storeroom now known as the treasury. The treasury, like the antechamber, was filled with items including many boxes and model boats. Most notable in this room was a large gilded shrine. Inside the gilded shrine was a canopic chest made of single block calicate. Inside the canopic chest were the 4 canopic jars, each in the shape of an Egyptian coffin and elaborately decorated, holding the pharaoh's